Hi, my name is Annie. I've been living in the house of a congressman almost since I was born, and I want to tell you about the rules and how we live there. The fact is that my mother has been working for Mr. Jones for a long time, and you will not believe it, but once upon a time, they were in love with each other and were even going to get married. Well, then something went wrong, and well, listen. My mother's name is Vicky. She is a wonderfully beautiful woman. When she was very young, there was a guy who ran after her. They went to law school together. His name was Dylan. My mother did not like it. Many suitors ran after her. Everyone wanted to date her. In the end, Dylan turned out to be the most stubborn of all, and my mother agreed to date him. According to her, it was an incredible relationship. They loved each other without memory and completely immersed themselves in the relationship. Many envied them, even tried more than once to quarrel with a couple to break it, but nothing worked. Such was the love. They'd been dating for a couple of years, and the time had passed quickly. Well, then the question arose, what to do next? Because time passed, it was logical to get married. Mother's parents were long dead, so she'd been an orphan since she was a teenager. She had a guardian, her grandmother, but she only supported her, and so was not particularly interested in life. So my mother made the decision on her own. Dylan proposed to Mom, she agreed, and then he notified his parents. They reared up. My mother is not a very suitable candidate because in addition to beauty, it was important to take into account her position, social and financial. And what about my mother? The girl was an orphan, forced to earn money right after graduating from college by herself because her grandmother was not going to help anymore. Of course, they did not like it and they expressed a clear no. So their son did not move against it because they put all his future, namely financial support from them, on the other side of the scale. It was painful and terribly unpleasant when he left my mother. She said that for a long time, she could not come to her senses and did not know how she would continue to live. But time passed, my mother gathered all her strength, met another, I was born, and they did not have a relationship, and they also broke up. Only after a long time, my mother found out that Dylan got married, became a congressman, his mother died, and his father aged so much that he could not really walk. However, it didn't matter. Everyone lived their own lives. And then something terrible happened. A black streak in the life of my mother and me began. I was very ill. It turns out that I had big problems with my kidneys, needed surgery. My mother did not know who to ask for help because she had no friends or acquaintances left. For a long time, she was looking for money, but we were wasting time, and she overcame her pride and went to her only good friend, Mr. Jones. She quickly found him because he was already a public figure. She practically burst into his office. It took him a moment to recognize her as she was, haggard and emaciated, but her beautiful eyes were still large and twinkling. He was shocked, unable to utter a word at first. Mom immediately started with the case. She laid out all the cards at once that she needed help, a round sum for the operation of her child. He was confused when he heard the amount, was silent for a long time, and said that this is not a small amount of money. My mother asked him for a loan, but they both realized it would be almost impossible to pay such a large amount with my mother's fickle work. Mr. Jones thought about it for a while and then suggested that my mother earn this money as a servant in his house. At first, my mother was unsure, to think that the ex-girlfriend he was going to marry would live in his house and work as a servant there. But then she agreed. For the money, for me. They agreed to keep their former relationship a secret, and the next day, we arrived at his mansion with our belongings. Mr. Jones, as promised, paid for my treatment. It turned out even more, however. He did not spare money for me, while my mother lived and ate for free, not on the salary. It was awkward at first, because his son, a little younger than me, and Mr. Jones's wife were running around in the house. But then I got used to it. My mother quickly learned what to do and how to do it, and we were given a nice room. After the operation, I spent some time in the hospital under observation, but then I went on the mend and I was so happy. It was a happy day for both of us. We came to our new home where we live to this day. But I didn't know then that this wasn't all the intrigues that could happen in our humble lives. When about a year had passed, the house began to hear loud swearing, scandals between Mr. Jones and his wife. It would seem that what else is needed for happiness? They had a cool mansion, in addition to us, a lot of servants, a huge garden, a swimming pool, 2 big, beautiful dogs, a personal driver. You can't even imagine how much they celebrated the holidays, but they never forgot about me either. In general, Mr. Jones gave the servants a bonus for every big holiday, and those who have children still gave gifts. There was always something sweet and something from toys, and the last time on my birthday, I was given a smartphone. I was almost mad with joy at the time. I was pleased that he treated us well. Is he still ashamed of the past? They often received guests, and each time the celebration was immodest. There was no need for a reason. They gathered just like that. And despite the luxurious life, when the house quieted down, the last guest left, swearing and scandals woke up. Sometimes it even seemed to me that the parties were only necessary in order not to swear again. In the end, the woman, his wife, packed up and went home with her son. Mr. Jones called after her that if she left, he would not come for her. But she did not look back. A week passed and he started drinking alcohol. He came home drunk. My mother met him, put him to bed, helped the next day, brought breakfast to his room. Not only did she do it because the job required it, but I think she still had feelings for him. I don't remember how much time passed like this, but one day, he came home drunk again. My mother put me to bed and then went back to help him go to bed, but they both went out into the living room, where my mother and I had a room nearby, so I could hear them talking. They recalled their relationship, what it was like, what both of them were like, and what happened during the time they didn't see each other. Mr. Jones said that the woman who left him was the chosen one of his parents. He confessed to his mother that from the moment they got together, he was no longer happy, as he was with his mother. She just laughed and said he wasn't himself. I opened the door a crack and saw him try to put his arm around her, but she pulled away a little. She thanked him for his help in my treatment, but said that the past is the past and should be left behind. Suddenly, he abruptly got up from the sofa, pulled out his wallet, and from somewhere in the back pocket showed her a crumpled, battered photo of them together. "I've kept it all these years, Vic," he said. I suddenly saw my mother cry. I wanted to go out to her, but he fell on the floor at her feet, began to hug and ask for forgiveness. My mother tearfully began to say that she still had a grudge against him. "You have no idea what I've been through. My grandmother gave up on me when I found out that I was pregnant with your child." My mother screamed and cried even more. What? I thought. He was just as shocked. Mom took her hands off her face, looked at him, and said, "Annie is your daughter." Oh, the horror at that moment. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was suffocating. I saw Mr. Jones turn pale, and he started hugging her legs and arms again, and then he started asking why she didn't say anything. My mother only said that she found out after he left her. I couldn't stand the tension and left the room. They could tell by the look in my eyes that I'd heard everything. My mother tried to explain to me, but I calmed her down, and then I told her that we all needed to have a good talk. Anyway, we discussed a lot that night. Mr. Jones, my father, has vowed to take care of my mother and me in the future. They made a promise to each other to try to rebuild the family. And who knows, maybe it was fate that brought us together. He divorced the woman who did not suffer much after receiving compensation for her son. What has changed for us? Nothing. My mother also does housework, says she can't sit around. I moved to another separate room. While this is all fine, I think we still need time to get used to the idea that everything is different now.